Okay, so basically the topic that I had for today's talk was immense, and I started doing the presentation. I went about it. It was becoming very, very boring, and I do like an approach, show, don't tell. As such, I'll try to focus more on data and more on information than really go into the different firewalls and the different antivirus, because each of those topics would require me to speak for 1 hour, and I would not be able to cover them all. So I'll just do an overview of everything, and hopefully it will be something that you can take home and something that's interesting for you guys to see. And I will start with the problem. And so one of the major issues that we have is the multitude of types of attacks. And you can see here, obviously data for 2020 is not yet finished because the year is still ongoing. But normally the two most common types of attacks are Trojans and adware. Adware has seen a huge spike in terms of attacks and detections in the last year, in 2019. On the previous years, Trojans were mainly always the most common type of attacks. And adware, it's a softer kind of attack. Some guys don't even know that they are infected. It's like when your browser has been hijacked and the search engine is not Google anymore. And now it's something else that actually redirects to Google, but injects their own ads when you're searching. And they try to monetize you that way. It's normally not a dangerous type of malware, but nonetheless, it's malware. But Trojans are the ones that are most insidious, are the ones that allow the remote attacker to go inside of your computer, try to control it in some shape or form, and it's just the spearhead. After the Trojan is in, they can do a lot of stuff with it. You can see that other types of malware are a lot less common. So normally spyware, even backdoors, are more focused, more related to state nation attacks and targeted attacks, not a generic spread of stuff. Hack tools and rogues. What are rogues? Rogues are a very interesting type of malware where they disguise themselves as being something else. It's like you go to a web page and they say, oh, you have virus on your computer, please click here to clean it. And so they are the actual virus. They are trying to deceive you into thinking, okay, let's install this that will clean me up my computer and you'll be pristine, but they are actually the vehicle to start and infect your computer. And then also for targeted stuff, you have hack tools that allow the remote attackers to go into your machine, monitor what you're doing, and try to exfiltrate data. All of the graphics that I have been stolen from I've not pretend that I made them up. No, they have been stolen from other entities. I'll try to reference them as best as I can. Some of them are not on the slides, but they are on the slide notes. You can go and check the information sources by yourselves later if you feel to. Okay, so we have a set and the taxonomy of attacks. Even this taxonomy is not normalized nowadays. It's kind of clear what type of attacks, but there are always new attacks coming up. Different vendors classify them in different ways. But what are the most attacked applications? And this is a shocker. The most attacked applications are Office applications. Take a minute to breathe that in. It's Office. That's the most commonly used application to be attacked. And the second one, browsers. So something that you do every single day. When you use a computer for productivity, it's insidious. You don't do that with a few exceptions. You always use Office and a browser. I don't know anybody that uses a computer nowadays connected to the internet that does not use a browser. That's just kind of impossible. And so all the other attacks are really, really small. If you discount the pie, that's the pie chart slice, that's Office and browser. Obviously, you have direct attacks on Android, and the reason that you have those, it's because the prevalence that they have. So attackers try to go for the biggest markets. They try to go for what's the biggest slice that I can, with little effort, have the most return. So this is also an investment for them. And you can see here also there are many Java attacks. Flash attacks have been reducing in size on the last few years because Flash is now end of life. And I think the last version of Flash has been released by Adobe this year. No new versions will come, so Flash is going to die, and so this is going to disappear in a few years. And PDFs are still a very common vehicle for attack because the format, it's a very old format, I think from the 70s. Security was not really an issue at the time, and it's possible to do all kinds of crazy stuff with PDFs. And this goes back also into the Office. So I would consider almost PDF as being inside of the Office. And you can see that everything else that remains, it's so small that's irrelevant. So for me, it's impressive that you can, in a few categories, summarize all of the attacks. Okay, so this is just to give you the big picture, what's the threat and what are we trying to protect. So why are we going for firewalls? And what does firewalls bring to the table that we want them to? So the main reason that firewalls were invented was to prevent access from whatever network you are to a private network, to a network that you consider sensitive. So you want to protect something. And as an example, we have here the one where it's the global network that everybody's using. And then you have a firewall between both of them, and that restricts the accesses from the public side to the private side. And the main benefits from this are obviously you got this wall garden security, where you put a wall all around the perimeter that you consider relevant, and then you provide, and then you provide a cross of bridges to get in. So firewalls also bring you safe remote access. This allows you to work from home into your office and establish a secure connection as you were locally there. They also provide you the basic means to monitor the connections in and out. So if you only have a firewall, and obviously if your tool is a hammer, all your problems look like nails, but still you can get a lot of mileage from the traditional firewalls. And this talk was about, okay, let's talk about advanced firewalls. But firewalls are as basic and as one of the first types of defenses that were developed to control cyber attacks. And so even though we now talk about next generation firewalls, the concept of next generation firewalls comes back from the early 2000s. So it's not really different. It's just you have more capacity, but you also have a lot of more traffic. So you always go capacity and the volume of data that you have, they go hand in hand. And the last thing that you can also get from a firewall is setting up some alerts. So you can have sinkholes where, I know these are sites and IPs that are blacklisted and I don't want to contact them, but I want to know every time an internal machine connects to these malware sites or IPs, I want to be alerted. I want to be contacted. I want to send this information for my security team to analyze. And so they effectively provide you with this type of functionalities. But from my perspective, the most important thing that a firewall can allow as a feature for any organization is to have a segregation point where instead, and we'll see this later in the presentation, of having just a flat network where you can reach everything, they can provide you segregation of multiple networks. Might that be only on subnets? Might that be with VLANs? Might that be with rules that block specific traffics? So firewalls are very important for that. But are they effective? And no one better than Ponemon Institute, which every year surveys the professionals from the United States and from all over the world on our stuff being used by organizations. And by stuff here, we'll look at the concept of legacy firewalls. And for them, legacy firewalls are all types of firewalls. They just don't consider the new type of firewalls that are normally stuff more related to machine learning that's less performant, but we'll see that later. And as a shocking, 61% of the respondents say that firewalls do not contain security incidents. whoa, this is a shocker. So if more than 50% of the people don't consider that firewalls are an effective measures to protect their infrastructure, then why are we using them? That raises the question. Most effectively, and this is a topic that's very relevant for healthcare because of the attack that occurred in Germany, where due to a bad ransomware attack, actually a person died in an hospital. And the case, just to tell the story, were a group of attackers. They thought they were doing a ransomware against a university. They didn't know that the university had an hospital, or at least they didn't know that the two were connected. And the attack took out the IT systems for the hospital. Some sick people, some sick lady was in route.
Luis, if you can hear me, sorry for this interruption, but if we keep it according to schedule, we have less than a minute left. But I think that because what you say is very important and very useful, we can still perhaps 5 minutes from the next section. So if could you please wrap up the next of the slides as well?
I'm just in the first.
I know where you are. That's why I needed to.
I'll speed up. Okay.
Let us give 10 minutes more to this. Okay.
I think it's very
let us
very useful.
10 minutes more. It's very important, and
you can take 10 and then see where we can go then from down.
We will cut more at the summary.
Right.
I'm sorry, time is always relative. Okay. Basically, the lady needed to be shipped to another hospital because systems were down, and she died on the way. Okay, so firewalls are not very effective against ransomware. No, they are not. And they are even less effective against data exfiltration because normally they are focusing on a barrier for what comes in. They are not focusing on what goes out. Obviously, you can do both, but it's very, very hard to make rules that restrict the outgoing traffic. It's very, 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 very hard because it's so different. You have so many places that you contact that if you go with the best practice of a default deny rule and you don't open, let's say, all the web for the users, you are going to get daily complaints from the users to the IT and to the security team saying, I cannot reach site X or I cannot go to the place Y. And so it's normally, in terms of usability, you just go, okay, let's give them access to all of the internet in terms of protocols and not restrict that. And I've seen multiple organizations try to do the exact opposite and failed. I have yet to see one organization that has been able to control and say, you can only go to that IP and to that site. It's through the scope of all of the VLANs and all of the subnets that they have. They can do this for specific networks that are very restricted, but as a global rule, they cannot do this. And finally, one problem with firewalls is the process in place to change the rules. And nobody likes when they ask for a rule to change and it takes 3 days. If it takes 3 weeks, everybody's pulling out their hairs and say, the security guys are not letting me work. I have this project that needs to be on the street. And so you're always racing between security and safety and agility to do new projects. So firewalls are a tricky thing to manage. And like I said, it's very hard to deploy new applications. It implies a set of rules. But the thing that they do very well is that they allow for microsegmentation. They allow for segregation of your network. And most of the guys already seen this as well. Firewalls are not the end-all be-all of security. They are just the first step or one of the first steps. The security controls are now shifting from the network into the devices, into the host management, into the IDRs. And that's a shift of strategy. In terms of network segregation, most of them still use network segregation, but only a few of them report that they use network segregation for this. They normally use also routers and switches to do the VLAN. Most of them have now adopted segmentation on their networks, and this is a very important thing. Not keeping the network flat is very, very important. How they do this segregation? Mostly with legacy VLAN, legacy firewalls with virtual LANs and with next generation firewalls. So everything comes down to either firewalls or routers with VLANs and switches with VLANs to do network segmentation. Okay, shortcomings. Two big complaints about firewalls. One, if you have a very high level of traffic, they are very, very expensive. If you want to go with tier 1 firewall, Fortinet and a checkpoint, they are very expensive at very high levels of traffic. Even though the price has come down in the last years, they are still expensive. And most of the firewalls do not have enough capacity to do DPI on full traffic. You can do it for a set of subnets, for a restricted part of the traffic, but not for all of the traffic. So you don't have fine-grained controls on the rules that you want to do on traffic. You still do it the old ways, like you say, I allow those protocols, I allow those ports, I allow those IPs. Those are the most effective ways to do it. And what are the most common complaints about firewalls? They are too costly, they take too long to implement, the access controls and the policies that they define are not granular enough. Okay, shortcomings. Yeah, we did those. Let's go to antivirus. Antivirus, as you guys know, are used to detect, identify, and prevent and delete computer virus. Nowadays, antivirus do a lot of stuff, and you have a ton of vendors from antivirus, and some of them are missing here. You have a lot more. Antivirus were the first software product, not considering network appliances, to be to move into the cybersecurity space. And they mainly protect against 3 types of threats. When you have no files, you have everything in memory, and you need to monitor the network, you need to monitor USBs, you need to monitor the hypervisors like the hardware level. When you have no files on disk, but files are indirectly used, when they leverage, let's say, PowerShell or files that have DLLs, and you need to use them to run the execution, run the exploits. And type 3, where it actually depends on exploit. And type 3 is the most common one. Type 2 and type 1 are more sophisticated than type 3. I'll leave that there for you guys to see later. And you have multiple types of antivirus. One, it's signature-based, and it's the traditional ones. They have a very big database with all of the signatures, parts of files that are considered malicious. And every time they scan a file, they go and chunk it out and see if one of those chunks matches the database. And when the match occurs, they say, this is a virus, this is something that we need to do. You have new types of antivirus, and these types of AVs are already old, which are heuristic-based, where they try to do user and device behavior analytics. And they try to detect when some behavior is an outlier and something weird occurs. And they say, okay, I don't know what this is, but this is suspicious. And if this happens a lot, then you need to take care of it. And the third one, and this is like a subsection inside of the antivirus taxonomies, which is the rootkit detection. They allow to scan for particular type of attacks that have low levels of persistence. It's like when you have a virus that's so nasty that if you clean all of your system, it can still, let's say, infect the firmware of your GPU. And when you install a new operating system, it could reinfect the system. These are very nasty bits of software. They are normally only available to the highest level of attackers, say state nations and people with a lot of money. And there are multiple ways that they work. But nowadays, antivirus don't work only on your computer. So mostly you have locally, and they are very fast, millisecond fast, analyzing the files, detecting with some precision against either a signature database, a machine learning model, or behavior models on the client side, but then they communicate with the cloud. And on the cloud, you can do stuff that is long-term. You can do stuff that takes a lot longer to process. You can also have bigger models, stuff that does not fit in your computer but fits on a cloud, and you can run detection on those models and get a better accuracy. You can process the files and run them inside of a sandbox, do dynamic tracing, and try to see exactly what the file is doing. And based on that information, then you can do big data analysis. And you can say, okay, I have not seen this file before, but it matches the behavior of other files in terms of files open, in terms of network ports open, in terms of activity up and down. And you can see why this is on this scale, because on your computer it needs to be very fast. On the cloud, it can be very, very slow. Sometimes it takes days to do this, not hours. But it increases the ability to be fast to respond to zero-day attacks. Even if the first organization is not protected, if 1 day later we already know how the attack works and it can be solved, all of the other entities can be protected. So it reduces the market share that the attackers have to attack. This is why it's very important to work in the cloud and to be able to share the information between the different entities. Okay, now I'll jump back to the latest part of the presentation, backups. And I'm trying to speed run because I know we are very late. What are backups and why are they relevant? Backups are no more than digital copies of the software that you normally keep on an alternate site. And the basic process is you have your data, you backup somewhere else, and then when you need, you can restore it. This is Backups 101. There are mostly 3 types. There are more, but unstructured, something that you do ad hoc. You have your Word files and you want to save it on a cloud, you want to save it on a USB stick. They are useful in terms of emergencies, but they are not very reliable. Sometimes you forget to backup stuff, they don't automate. Sometimes you want stuff that you did yesterday, but you only have a backup from 1 week ago. Well, easy to do, but terrible in terms of automation. Then you have full system imaging. You can go and copy all of the bytes that you have on your computer, on your VMs, on your servers, and store that in a backup system. This is good. It allows to restore the data to the original state, but it's very, very time intensive. You cannot do a full image every day. It's very, very slow. And so new methods have come as incremental and differential. I'll not mention differential here, but it's a better version of incremental, where you do a screenshot once, and then every day you just do the deltas, and you just store the deltas. And instead of having gigabytes and gigabytes and terabytes of information, you can only work on the deltas, and that's a lot faster. But backups, why are they relevant? One, and the most important thing, they prevent data loss. They help you do business continuity. If you want to restore in another site the information that you have because something bad happened, you can do that. They also are a way to deal with historical data. Sometimes the systems become so big that you cannot run on all the size of the data that you have, and you have to split it into chunks, and you have to store it away. But if later you have an audit, you have something that really requires you to go through the past and see the previous information, you can do that. You can go into your backups. But the most important thing, they provide to you peace of mind. And not only protection, but also they provide some type of safety net against ransomware. When you have a ransomware attack, the only way that you can avoid to get your data, to pay the attackers to get your data back, is by having backups. If you don't have backups, it's game over. Okay, and why are these attacks so insidious? Typically, and originally, all the networks were flat. You only have flat architectures everywhere. What is a flat architecture? It's a network where you only have one broadcast domain. This means that if the device A wants to contact the device B, it just sends the message, the ARP message, and you'll get a response saying, that's the way to go to B. And that always works because they are on the same network. But that brings a very, very dangerous problem. If you get to just one device, you can see all of the other devices. And so you cannot contain, you cannot restrict an attacker. After he gets the foot in, he can see everything. This is a very, very bad way to do. But still, many organizations do have still flat networks because they are a lot easier to reason with and a lot easier to do. More advanced organizations have a set of VLANs. Well, they say, we have a VLAN for printers, we have a VLAN for servers, we have a VLAN for PCs, but everything still kind of is all on the same VLAN. The servers are all on the same VLAN. So if I compromise one server, all of the servers on that VLAN can also be compromised or at least accessed. But you already have some resilience, you have dual homing, you have redundant routing rules. If one site goes down, the other one is still responding, it's fully meshed. It's a lot more resilient than the previous version. But still, it's not the good way to, or the best practice to go. The best practice nowadays is to have everything segregated by function and to have at least a security appliance in the middle controlling the access between one network and the other network. And to have firewalls in place, not only in a wall garden solution where you protect the inside from the outside, but also inside. You protect both zones from the inside of your organization, saying that you only have one access to the firewall and you cannot access all of the ports and all of the IPs on the other subnet. You have a set of rules that we have pre-approved, like for DNS servers, for DHCP servers, for whatever you have, but nothing else. Okay, so moving on for the last slide. And this is where can SPHINX help you guys? And SPHINX can help you guys here on multiple places. For one, it can help you deploying a network and monitoring solution and the CM, which has interoperability with existing devices. Might those be firewalls, IDSs, IPSs, and other stuff. It can also help you in the endpoint protection. We support YARA rules, we can deploy an agent and do validation, signature-based validation against a set of attackers, and we can continuously update those rules based on the knowledge base that's updated every day. It can also do anomaly detection. This is mostly on the network level and not on the device level, but it monitors the network traffic and can check when the traffic is out of bounds, when you have weird packets coming in. And this is all backed into a decision support system where it says, okay, I got a notification from the CM, I've got another one from the endpoint protection, another one from the anomaly detection. I think machine A is compromised. Please send an IT technician there, and I recommend to do the action X. And furthermore, and also very important for us, it's the ability to share information. So everybody's going to be attacked, just a matter of when. So you want to have the more information as possible so that you know exactly how to deal with the case. And sometimes you have to sacrifice a few organizations for the other ones to survive and to do better. So this is why for us it's also very important that the knowledge sharing to be an integral part of SPHINX. And you don't need to be concerned with, oh, what about my privacy data that's going to be shared through these reports? No, we also provide dynamic ways to anonymize sensitive data. Like you have network trace, but you don't want the payload to go, just want to the relevant flows. You can anonymize that and just send you the relevant flows. And last but not the least, we also provide the means for homomorphic encryption, where you can have multiple organizations share data and data still be encrypted and still be useful. You can still provide search and queries on top of that. Okay, I'm very sorry for rushing through the presentation. I really dimensioned for a bit more than 20 minutes. Hopefully you guys took something out of it, and I'm available for questions.